Welcome everyone to Adaptive's latest webinar. This one is specifically about the Korean app market and how to take a look at the things that are similar and different about how they do things, and what Korean users are looking for when it comes to apps. So today we've got the great pleasure of having Alan Park back, head of marketing at AX, to help us understand how this market is different and the things that you need to
Right.
do differently. So thanks so much, Alan, for joining us, and go ahead and take it away.
All right. Thanks very much, Ben. So thanks for having us back again for this, great opportunity to get connected with everybody all throughout the world. I know it's like, late at night in European time and, evening in, Florida and afternoon in, US. So welcome everybody. And I'm very thrilled to explain about my home country and how the cultural, peculiarities are, applied to the onboarding and the payrolls. So let's get
Awesome.
started.
And
So,
as just a quick shout out, really quick, sorry.
yeah,
If anybody has questions in the audience, please feel free to throw them in the chat or in the Q&A feature that's built into Zoom. And I'll be happy to kind of keep an eye on that, and I'll field those to Alan either during the presentation if it makes sense, or at a bare minimum we'll have a Q&A at the end. So feel free to throw your questions in as you get them, and we'll get to them.
all right, thanks, Ben. So to get started with, I'm sure, if, any of you guys, have joined the previous, webinar that I did, I like to start with a quick question. Okay, so I think, most of you might be aware of this, but is Google the most popularly used search engine in Korea? What do you think? Yes or no?
We have one vote for no.
Okay.
No, yes, several no's, it looks like. One
Okay.
yes.
One, yes. If most of them are aware, are well aware that Google share is actually only 32%, while Naver, Korean made search engine slash, comprehensive search portal, website portal that's called Naver is it has about 58% share. So in a nutshell, so some of the global giants like Google, Uber Eats, and Amazon are number one market share in Japan. Google has like 80%, search engine market share. Uber Eats, it bit the Japanese-made delivery service that's called Demaikan, pretty recently, and Amazon also bid Rakuten Market. So why this has happened? So on the Korean side, we have Naver that I just mentioned, and Baemin is called. It can be translated as the tribe of the delivery food, and Coupang is the Korean version of Amazon, pretty much. And they tend to thrive while these global giants took over in Japan. Why was it so? Is that the Korean people, it will be true. I'm not trying to like say that, Koreans are only people that, value time as much as gold and, price competition is very high, but the culture itself, is really competitive and makes these values much, much more valued and highly appreciated. It's just that, the Amazon in Korea couldn't afford like the same day delivery as Coupang did. So the obviously people would love to get their order delivered at your house faster. And price was still reasonable, and the Coupang, took over the Korea before Amazon was able to do the on same day delivery. So the time is gold. Coupang won the Korean users by giving faster and more prompt services. And so like another sayings like what the foreigners were shocked whenever the for how fast Koreans tend to be. So like whenever a website loads more than 3 seconds, they shut it down and go on to somewhere else. So it's pretty crazy that as a Korean myself, we really like things to happen very very fast. So I don't know how they deal with all the traffics every morning, but it's just one of the things. And the price competition. I want to mention that the Uber Eats had to leave Korea while Baemin secures its top market share because when Uber Eats started their business in Korea, they charged commission about 30% of every order, while Baemin only took 10%. So Uber Eats' strategy was to increase the quality of the food that can be delivered through Uber Eats and charging a little more money to its users. But when you order delivery food, you don't, I mean, it might be good to get a very, nice food from a nice restaurant by delivery, but you would expect, it'll cost more money than usual, just, everyday, restaurants, right? So, and people didn't really find that interesting or, as attractive as, the delivery systems that are already there. And another thing about this is that it's kind of a side note to the price competition is that the food delivery was already popular in Korea before Uber Eats, before Baemin, before any of the application was invented, even before smartphone. So, so like the Koreans are already like used to when you order food by delivery, they have this mind that it's for relatively cheaper food. So the price competition can definitely be more sensitive to certain categories in Korea, but overall is very important to remind yourself that okay, how can I have more competitiveness with my pricing? And lastly, I didn't put it on the slide, but Spotify also couldn't succeed in Korea, even though it made pretty good, success in Japan. One of the reason why is that the Korean made music streaming services like Melon and Bugs and all those, services are sponsored and supported by the three big giant Korean telecom services like KT, SKT, and LGU Plus. So all of them always provide a certain discount if you sign up for a telecom service. You get like 20-30% discount on Melon or Bugs and the services. So they that's how they could make uh, more competitiveness in their own market. So to win competition, it's really important to take consideration of these two values in Korea. But I'm not to say that all the global giants failed in the Korean market. We still have YouTube and service like Netflix sharing number one market share in Korea. Yeah, I think, most of you can guess why. I mean, any culture, originality, and exclusiveness are very, very valued. But Korea being a competitive, culture, obviously, they won something that's unique because that makes you more competitive. And once you have the things that not other alternatives are there, there's no choice. But even that being said, YouTube, Netflix is there, but there's another example that the global giants couldn't really succeed in Korea is Twitch. So the streaming service like Soup and Chijijik, I know it's a weird pronunciation, but those are the Korean made uh, alternatives. But even though Twitch started with pretty unique service, its service wasn't as unique as what Netflix is still doing. Providing unique and original content over and over. So it's whenever you are considering to expand your market entrance to the Korean market, it's always to remind yourself what's your brand and what is the USP that you can provide to the Korean users and really highlight it. I think, that can be really important. And I will, get to the point where, those brand can be played out on your onboarding and the paywall screens. Yeah, so and we'll go back to this Hofstede analysis I just added Korean to what we used in the previous webinar. So you can easily notice that the Japan and Korea share some of the common ground, but except the motivation towards achievement. So, like, we can say that both, Korean and Japanese users tend to strive every day for better future, trying to reduce any uncertainty and risk as much as possible. So instead of indulging, joy and other fun, they work hard today so that they can rest in the future. But Japanese people do that to achieve certain goals. So that's what, drives them as a strong motivation. But the motivation towards achievement, Korea has very, very lower score compared to Japanese culture. And it makes that, people work hard, not for a certain goal of your own, but just not to get behind compared to people running next to you.
So
So,
what's I
yeah,
have a
go ahead.
question for you about that, about like not getting behind. Is it that people are trying to like stay clued into pop culture, or are they trying to experience the latest like tech? Like what does it mean for the average Korean on not getting behind? Is it literally just kind of comparing yourself to your neighbors? What's kind of the story behind that?
Yeah, so good question. I think, if you go into the social, network like Instagram, you know, what you are wearing is say, something from uh more regular price brand, and your friend is wearing more high-end brand. I'm, afraid to mention any, specific brands, but
Sure.
that kind of comparison makes you feel behind, even though, what you are wearing has no problem and,
Right.
there is no issue with your life or achieving whatever you want to achieve in your
Hmm.
life. But what you are valuing, what the average Korean people like to value is to, for you to stand out in the group or in maybe inside the company or in at the school, even in among the family. Yep.
Okay.
And the fast tag, yeah, not everybody would be like, willing to, oh, there's new iPhone coming out, I should get it. But, it's again, same with the high-end, brand, wearing clothing and everything. So if you have the latest, device that everyone is aware, immediately becomes the center of the attention. And that, I think, in our, mindset, that's how you can gain competitiveness inside of the group. So I don't know if that, answered your question, but, that's just how I have been,
Right.
witnessing while I lived in Korea. And it's
Sure.
still the same whenever I get back on the Instagram and other,
Right.
socials and, where I'm still friends with, some Korean friends there.
Yeah. No, that makes total sense. I just it was curious to understand more about kind of the underlying motivation there, but that totally makes sense.
Yeah. So let's see how those, appear, how that can be, mingled and implemented in Korean onboardings and paywall. So let's get on to our main topics today. Yeah, so the fast tempo, originality, and exclusiveness, all those, preferences make the onboarding to be a little more simpler. Well, I think, a lot like, what you guys are used to in US or the European markets. But so they are very quick to the point. Onboarding includes account like only about like account setup, very simple feature intro, and then consent for like notification, location sharing, and app tracking and so on. But I will show some examples, but some of the feature intro or even consent sometimes are moved after the home screen. So onboarding is just about the account setup. And then the feature intros and asking for the permission is happens as a pop-up screens on the home screen. So yeah, I mean, eventually the time that the users have to go through for entire onboarding process might be the same, but how the users are felt, the onboarding is kind of over already because they are seeing the home screen on the back, so that's there. And feature intro can be skipped, so like even though there are like 6 to 7 pages to show what can be done in the app, but there will always be that the CTA on the bottom of the page that you can start right away. And progress bar, as it is true for most of other cultures, very helpful for an onboarding, completion ratio. And pages that show the feature intro has minimized text and, very strong brand color to really show that your service is original and exclusive. So first example is called, 당근 market. It can be translated into carrot market. It's a flea market app. So you can, buy, sell, your stuff uh, with your neighbors. So it's very, highly dense, culture. So like, you have maybe a cup that is, out of use, you can just, post it in the app and then you can, trade it with your neighbor. And well, anyway, so it starts with the splash screen and there is the identity verification as the account setup process. So you will see this often. So phone number verification to really tell the app or any other services that who you are is very important. So I'm sure there are a lot of services that's not from Korea will ask for the identity verification, but the hurdle is very high, right? But I just want to mention that it is quite normal in Korea. So yeah, so like, even though I'm from Korea, but I don't have a Korean phone number, so like it always makes me stressed out to sign up on your service because I don't have it one, and the service cannot really, identify me as a Korean person if I don't have a phone number. But anyway, so and then the consent is, because before you enter your location, obviously it's important for the polymarket service, and there's the accepted terms. And after you finish the very sim account setup, now you have the home screen and a pop-up page for extra consent. So notification and tracking the user's other activity in the other apps and the home. So if you remember, Ben, what we talked about in the Japanese examples last webinar, this
Hmm.
is very simplified.
Right. Yeah, the Japanese ones were much more involved. There was
Yeah,
a lot more screens, a lot more explanation. That's something that I'm definitely noticing with a difference between those and these is that there's still plenty I think of explanation, but it's
right,
not as involved.
right. Yep, and some other examples, account setup, simply done, and it's a referral. So if you have a code that you someone if you're invited by someone who's already using this app, you get a certain, point back and feature intro on your first slides here, and then the consent consent continues. So like this, pages only explain like, what are the mandatory consent and the optional ones. And from the home screen, it just asks, okay, can you give me this? Can you give me this access? Can you give me this access? And then you went in the home. So again, very, simplified and quick to the point onboarding process. And moving on to the neighbor pay is yeah, the, pay and cardless and just tap to pay and Naver again being in the most like popular search engine, it has all different kinds of services that it offer. Naver Pay is one of the popular e-payment system. So feature it starts with feature intro, unlike the other two examples that I showed, and so it just tells what it does. Well, it's kind of obvious, but so maybe because it's they expect users to already know what Neighbor Pay can do for them.
Hmm.
You notice the CTA bar on every feature intro. It can be skipped, so you don't have to go through every single page. So if you think you are already well aware of the service, you can just click on to uh, start button on the bottom to move to sign up, sign in, and again identity verification with your phone number and home.
How common is it to have the feature stuff be skippable? Is that something that really only very large established brands do, or is that something that is more of like a standard thing that lots of different apps in Korea would show them to you, but would give you the ability to skip them?
I would say it's closer to the standard, but it is more true if it's a widely known app like Neighbor Pay.
Sure. And is it the case that people like so there's having them but making them skippable, and then
Mhm.
there's just not even bothering with them at all. Is it the case that I guess it must be the case that there's enough users who do still want to see those feature screens that's why you would include them but make them skippable versus just like not including them at all?
So yeah, I think the prior that what you just mentioned is true
Yeah,
because even though I said the Korean culture are very competitive and
right.
very to the point,
Yeah,
but there will still be people who want to really understand what the service is, what the app is about.
right,
So
right.
you would wanna have I mean the screens like this, but if the providers are they are quick to the point and if they are they want to get the job done very very fast tempo, they
Hmm.
might just use you might often see the exact same screenshots are used for the feature intros, for
Mm,
example,
got it.
all the same
Okay.
copywritings and everything.
Right.
So, like all this, feature can be skipped during the onboarding process. So what the other apps usually do is they add this, pop-up, messages on an important feature from the home screen. Okay, so a user clicks on a certain feature. And then it's gonna, tell you, okay, if you click this, plus button, either
Hmm.
you can set a new, maybe like calendar, a new notification, and etc. So
Got it.
instead of having to go through every single feature that the app does, just like
Right.
what we found as more common stuff to do in Japan. In Korea,
Hmm.
is more like okay, here's the app, you
Right.
explore and let us know what you are more curious about.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So another skippable feature intro from the Coupang Eats. So it starts with the location sharing because for the sake of the service, it's kind of like Uber Eats, so like it's important to understand where it is, where you're located. So it starts with the consent and then the feature and the account setup. That's over. And this is triangle is for hiking trekking. So again, location permission and then the consent, and we got the skippable feature intro. So we have very brief, introduction to that, and it's it's like feature intro and then account setup at the same time. Actually, these CTAs, instead of just saying start, it says log in with your Kakao account or log in with your existing account. So it's many processes are either omitted or like shortened in the most effective way. So I think it was a good example to really make a contrast and comparison between a tracking app from Korea and tracking app from Japan. I'm sure you guys can already notice the difference between the two, even though you don't really understand, what's written on these captures. So the examples on the left are from Korea and the right on Japan, and there are more letters and text and more explanation and just, like half the text size and the shorter headings and I mean longer headings. So like the in Korea, try to put a word or a phrase as your heading instead of a sentence. It might be true to do that in Japan because it's more complete and more polite, but you know it's and writing a full sentence in Korea is very complicated. So I think it's fair enough to just have the keyword. I mean, just keyword and all that. Politeness level is hard to really match with the user's preference. So like yeah, headings can be very shortened and yeah. So moving on. So some other examples from Korean convenience store that's called CU. And there's it starts right away with feature intro. There's no account setup. There's no consent right away. So it just tells you what the app is about. And interestingly enough, it doesn't have skippable intro. I guess by omitting the account setup and consent, I think the service was, confident enough to show what can be done. But another thing about this is that even though I said it's feature intro, but it's more about, what the benefit of the users can get. So like, if there is an event, you can get notified very quickly and so on. And I think, I also what I want to mention about this is that, look at the play with the brand color throughout the onboarding. I mean, I think you guys could already see from the other examples with the neighbor pay, and which is, universally true, but, in Korea, I think, it can be extra highlighted that, it's important for your service to be recognized by a certain color or by certain even just copywriting so that, they can feel like, okay, this is a service that's pretty interesting. That's outstanding, even just for yeah, the color or just yeah, yeah. So
We do
localization,
have
I guess, in
we
that
do,
sense is, pretty important. Yes. Go
we
ahead.
do have a question that might be relevant just for since the screen is already up from
Yeah.
the crowd. So Constantine asks if we still include the onboarding screens like we see here,
Mhm.
should we duplicate what's shown like in the screenshots on the App Store page, or should we highlight other features? Is there any kind of
Mhm.
continuity there between like the App Store listing and like maybe what you're going to show here?
Mhm. So I think, it can depend on what are the features, but I think the screenshot that are used in the App Store listings are usually the ones that you care most about, right?
Sure.
So I think it's okay to repeat it in onboarding because you really wanna make sure that users at least have a chance to understand that our app provides this. So if
Hmm.
there is an extra features to that, I think what you can try to do is add those additional information or the feature intro from maybe the home screens or whenever the user clicks onto that feature. Would that make
Okay.
sense?
Yeah, makes sense.
Okay, gonna move on. So like yeah, I think it was a good question because it does look very much like
Yeah.
what you
Right.
normally see from the extra listings.
For sure. Yeah, it was a
Yeah.
good question.
Okay. Yep. And this example is for camping, camping diaries and to locate where the camping stations are. The feature intro and then consent are omitted. So just account setup and done. So I think it was an interesting example to show how onboardings can be simplified. And this is Tving is Korea's pretty big. I think for the Korean OTT this is number one. And even for an OTT service, this doesn't offer a personalization process or personalization pages on onboarding. Because OTT services tend to ask you like what do you prefer to watch? Like the what kind of categories to really optimize the user experience. But it's just straight up to talking about okay, what's currently available, what's currently out in our service, what's exclusive, and is I think from last year, TVing both the exclusive right to broadcast Korean Professional Baseball League
Mm,
KBO. So the second feature intro slash splash screen starts with that content instead of asking, oh Ben, what kind of
right.
genre do you like and what time do you like to watch and things like
Right.
that. So very simplified.
Do you think that's in part because they are one of the most popular services that they feel
I would
like
say so.
you're
Yeah.
going to them, right? Like you know what they have. So,
Yes.
yeah.
So if you have a very like unique or exclusive content in your service, I think the Korean users would prefer to get to that content instead of having to respond to multiple questions about
Sure.
yourself.
Right.
Like I already know what I want.
Right. Right.
Is
Yeah.
is average, I guess, motivation.
Right.
or the attitude. Yeah. So there's never pay, coupon, and see you. Just in all in common, less text, short headings, quick to the point. So simple design and Korean brand colors to show the originality. So yeah, again, if it's something that's already used in screenshot, that's totally fine. And just I think the designs can also be very like the patterns. There are patterns, right? It doesn't have to be crazy from screen to screen. It just yeah. So that's there, and it's often visible and discover. I mean, you can easily discover them in Korea. So was something to consider. So in sum up, onboarding tends to be shorter in Korea than Japan, and important information about features and how to use the app can follow later, maybe from the home screen or whenever the user clicks onto this specific feature. And skippable feature introduction may be preferred, and show your brand and let the users really remember it either through the color, either through your catch copy, CTA, and etc. And based on the conversation I just had with Ben, if your content or the service is unique and you're proud of it and you're confident with it, um, you don't have to go through the personalization or any other like onboarding processes. But I do understand that personalization is very, very important for app growth, because you really want to make sure you really want to gather more data from your users. You don't want to categorize them as just our users, but you want to categorize them into not just by the demography, but also through the category that they choose and etc. So I'm not trying to say that not having them will always make your service better in Korea. So like there are pros and cons, but from the cultural perspective, it seems that the Korean people tend to have these onboarding process that's more quick to the point. Okay. So let's move on to the paywall. So again, how this fast tempo and originality preference makes changes in differences in Korea. Kick to the point, show paywall during onboarding. Yes, hard paywall works in Korea too, just as in many other cultures. And paywall information are very, very simplified, and you can only show the necessaries. So it's quite common in their cultures, but also true, especially true in Korea. And time limit discounts may increase trial or subscription conversions. So like show that is exclusive for this amount of time and only for new users, only for like comeback users and so on. So and also as I mentioned through the intro part, Korean users are very sensitive to the price. So whenever you have to increase your price, be careful with it, and try to make sure that you explain why it had to be increased and so on. So all of that are I'm aware that they are practiced widely in US and other cultures too, but uh, take these elements into extra consideration whenever you're trying to uh, approach the Korean market. So let's talk about the paywall timing first. So like when it might be best to show the onboarding show the paywall throughout the onboarding process. Yeah, the concept of feature introduction, consent, and home. As we just looked at the examples of the Korean onboarding. The order doesn't always have to be start with account setup or feature. Yeah, it can be switched up and down. But so like, if the paywall, whether if it's, placed in the very, first section right after, whatever came first. And so like I, broke down into just, this four placements. So I guess, fastest would might work, but it's just that the users would have so little understanding of what the feature does. And even though they downloaded the app for free, but if the paywall is, thrown at your face, right away, it might, give them an understanding that it's actually not a free, service. Then you don't want to, you don't want your users to think about your service that way. So I think, it's not very recommendable, but it's either 2 and 3 or the 4. So 2 and 3, I will, show it in the next slide with the case study, but higher subscription if the paywall is, shown to the users in a more faster, timing, but it would, affect lower retention. And maybe the paywall after the home screen or right before the home screen, it would be like, lowest subscription conversion, but highest retention. So a service called Alami in Korea is quite widely used service for alarm and your sleep pattern service. So they did this case study. I read their blog and they just translated it in English myself. And it's whenever the paywall was placed at the end of the onboarding, and they did the test to move it to the faster funnel and more, even more. And as it was moved to earlier timing, subscription conversion increased from like 60% to 80%. Meanwhile, the day one retention dropped by about 6% in both placements. And some actual paywall design and structure recommendations here. So as you can tell, we have the how much discount that you are getting and the previous amount to actual payment that the users are required. So like, it's great to show those, important and then really, make the users feel that, okay, this is, a great deal, right? And don't forget to don't forget to put like this is the most popular menu or this is you get to get the most discount and so on. I think we are getting some questions. What do you think, Ben?
Yeah, yeah. So let's, if we could just jump back one slide for one of them. So Kyle
Sure.
asks about the previous one regarding like the stats that are there. Does that include trials, or is that just sort of coming in fresh to converting to a paid subscription?
Yeah, the blog, so Alarme's, personnel didn't mention specifically about it, but I would
Okay,
assume, both including both, I think it's just the subscription, the
okay.
full like, payment subscription, yes.
And are trials a popular thing in Korea, or not so much?
It is. It
Yeah.
is popular.
Okay,
Yes.
cool. So then, I guess maybe with this one or even the next screen, Konstantin asks, in Korea, it seems that red indicates growth and green indicates decline in financial contexts, which is the opposite of the color meanings in most Western countries. Given this cultural difference, should we also consider adjusting the color choices for the paywall design like price plans?
Okay, so let me see. Oh, so it's a very, good question, but most cases green still indicates growth and
Okay,
approval, and red indicates decline and maybe
okay,
downfall. But
right.
I think yeah, but only for like the stock market, red
Hmm.
up and blue means down. But
Got it.
other than that, I think you can still keep the green for approval and red for like going back.
Okay,
Yeah, I
cool.
think when you notice the red being the approval, I will go back to that point. But I mean there are slides in the following, but dark pattern was really popular in Korea. So like they put red, yes, or no in green. So people tend to click it, more
Mm,
more easily. So
right.
they are kind of tricking the users, and
Yeah,
now it's regulated. So I think it might have been the examples that I mean, they might have noticed.
right.
So keep green for approval and red for
Got it.
decline.
Sounds good.
Yep. I'm gonna, go through the other slides. So the paywalls being very, very simple. I mean, these are for OTT, so like you don't have to explain a lot about, what this can do. So you can just, simply, explain how many, users or devices can watch, simultaneously, and the level of resolution and the device types and the pricing. But as you can see, there is always this kind of ratio of it. Yeah. And if you remember from last webinar we did, there was an example from an OTT service in Japan that's called Bema. And I didn't get, I didn't bring, I didn't have room to put all the paywalls, scrolls here. So like this 1 and 2 is done for Wave, the OTT service from Korea, but the even for an OTT service in Japan, it tends to include all the much details for the premium plans. So simple and short, focus on the price, detail and long, focus on the benefit. So benefit can be, obviously, understood as the price, but more from the features and the services perspective. Yep. So example from the dating app. This doesn't offer a subscription, but IAP. So it's funny enough, it offers, okay, it says that, you are selected for a welcome gift. Like even though you are giving to everybody, it chose that specific copywriting that to make you feel special. And it, hands out this free stuff to like look at the profile and to request a friend. All has to be done through paid item, but it can be done for free. And but whenever they click start, they will be shown with this paywall. So there's this new user special price, and there's during the regular IAP shop list, you have this most popular UI to indicate that, okay, you want your users to purchase this, always, have them in the Korean market. Yep, comparison between the Korean dating app and the Japanese dating app. Well, this is for subscription again. It has 14 more captures than the 6, so like there are about like 20 of them, but in Korea it's done with just 2. So just like the Obama example, short and simple for Korea, detail long, and focus on benefits. And they even use the people's images. There's not in Korean one. Okay. Yep, some more of the discount ratio and the amount before the discount and recommendation from the Korean webtoon. Forgot the title. I will edit in when I share the deck. Sorry about that. So it's called Kakao Webtoon, and this is called Chujijik for live streaming platform. Yep. So I know it's already in your practice in other cultures, but maintain it. Keep on practicing it even in the Korean market. Yes. And so actually, case studies from, again, from Allow.me. So they did multiple tests, and they first had this, a paywall that's quite hard to exceed. Whether the X button is not very visible, or there is a specific logic to show that X button, right? And they made it easier for the users to exceed CTA, either through offering a CTA button that says skip this, or offering on the menu on the plan that says, okay, you can keep on using it for free, but the ads will still be there. So easier exit through CTA and easier exit as a menu. So all of them increased D1 retention, but decreased the conversion ratio for a pretty big bunch. So I think, for your conversion and the revenue side of mind, I think, yes, it's kind of obvious that, keep them on your paywall, keep for the users, but, at the same time, it might risk the retention, but at the same time, they did another test, but we can still, maintain the, retention and still increase the subscription. The Alumni team did what they did is just so still X is there, but less harder than the very, first, variable. And they added a little more, elements on the paywall. So the number of the entire service globally is like 50 million users are already satisfied with our service, and there's the uh like number one from App Store, and I guess easier to compare the price and so on. So they maintain the detention, but still had 15 to 30% conversion increase. So
So
yeah, go ahead.
are hard paywalls ones that you literally cannot skip? Is that something that is done in the Korean market, or is it frowned upon? Like what's the opinion of that?
So I think, for your conversion, I think it is good to have a hard paywall that's quite,
Sure.
hard to see from the user's perspective, but, never make it like impossible to exit.
Okay.
Still, even
Right.
though it's hard, I think it's good to fair enough to make a room for that.
Right.
And I will, get back to that again, but there's the new regulation in Korea that,
Sure.
it mandates, certain
Right.
options for the users to exit from the paywall and so on. So.
Okay. Then
So,
we
yeah.
well, we do also have a question from the chat from Nikolai. What's the usual discount for annual plans in Korea compared to the monthly subscription?
Oh, okay. That's well, it's very hard to say it because all the services, all the business models, all
Sure.
the yeah,
Sure.
uh, I mean, are quite different. But I can definitely tell you that some of the it's just like this Alumni plan here. The Korean service tend to offer price on the annual plans and
Mhm.
just offer the monthly without discount ratio.
Okay.
Because, obviously price sensitive culture, Korean
Hmm.
users want to get a plan that's discounted because, if they don't get it, what it kind of feels like, I mean, that's what the sales and discount does, right? You are
Sure.
getting behind, you're missing
Right.
something, you're losing.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
you
Yeah.
are, you are tapping onto the culture. So
Right.
obviously having an annually subscribed users will, benefit your service more.
Hmm.
So I think it might be worth a try to just offer the discount on the annual and
Right.
keep the price for the monthly.
Right. And getting a deal on the annual feel makes you feel like you're like either keeping up or even ahead of maybe some of your peers. Like, "Oh, I got a deal on this, right? I was able
Right,
to get a discount." Yeah, that makes sense.
exactly. Yep. And some other, paywall advisable, advisable elements to put on your paywall would be like the reviews from the users. It doesn't have to be actual reviews, but even you don't have to put these, testimonials here, but just mention the number of users, maybe number of ratings and the officially announced and so on. Yep, and another case study is from booking service in Korea. So it was the previous, paywall. So like it's not the subscription, paywall, but still, uh, a page where users purchase or pay money. So the review was more tiny, but it's now more visible with the design and placement, and it is also showed how many ratings made this review, but it made it more, I guess, larger, and then it actually says this is the number instead of it didn't really mention it's a number. It's a number, but there's a text that specifically says this is the number. So that's the change in the review. And previously they didn't put the final price that the users will be charged. And they just added, okay, this is the so whenever user chooses a menu from here, they on the actual payment slide. Now then they will understand, okay, the coupon or another extra discount ratio was applied, but why not just show it right away? And by doing so, they managed to increase the conversion and then revenue. Yeah, they didn't open the exact numbers, unlike just like the LME examples. But yeah, keep it simple. Always, quick to the point, and reviews and the price are the two elements that really drive the users, purchase or even conversion. So I think it's going to be important for you guys to remember those elements on your paywalls. Yep. Final point that I want to make is the about the dark pattern. I mean, I'm sure you guys are already aware of it, but there are, things like, promotional, dark pattern, disruptive, misleading, coercive. So like, showing so showing too much, pop-up pages that leads you to subscription or certain payment can be, restricted and so on. So what the providers now have to do is to whenever now service providers now must acquire permission from users 30 days before free trial converts to paid. And you don't want to show a pop-up window that I just mentioned, that increases paid plans multiple times if the user showed no intention. So if they said, if they clicked on the X button for the first time, or, I don't want to see this anymore, then, you cannot show that. But, it's okay for you to repeatedly show the window if the pop-up window gives the users a chance to do not show this for another 7 days. Then if the user clicks on it and the window doesn't, pop up for the next 7 days, but you are allowed to show it again. So now you really have to be more transparent and user friendly with your paywalls. And total amount of price. So like, there are, services that you normally do like, oh, this is only $10. But actually, you know what? This is additional, but I'm gonna charge you like $30. So
Mhm.
you don't want to do that. And the yeah, so whenever the users, start with the free trial, and so before, they sign up for that, they have to be announced in what date this amount will be charged for them. So yeah, I think, there is a little higher hurdle now in Korea with the subscription and then in-app, purchase, items. But I think, these were already important to really, build the good trust and, good,
Mhm.
customer relationship as a service, even though it wasn't regulated.
So I had a question, and Jacob had the same question in the chat, and that was on the 30-day sort of requirement for permission for the free trial converting. What happens if your free trial is less than 30 days?
Yeah,
Is there
then whenever the user starts the free trial, it has to be notified already.
you just notify them immediately? Okay,
Yes.
makes sense.
Yeah. Just to sum up, paywall during onboarding helps faster you show it, higher the conversion, but retention may be negatively affected. And show need the necessities, price, discount, time limit, discount if you have any, and a list of what will be provided. But the list of what will be provided can be, less, highlighted than the price and or even the number of reviews and stuff. And build reliability, meaning that, show the users that your app is renowned. So I think, maybe, some of you will think like, maybe my app is already, quite popular and widely and popularly renowned in maybe US, maybe in France, maybe in Germany. Would that, affect it? Would that mean anything to the Korean users? And the answer to that question is yes. So anything that's like already, used by American users, the Korean users tend to feel like, okay, that's also important for us too. So like, so yeah, don't always, assume that, the Korean people would maybe, find it negative or, find it indifferent about what other, countries people, feel about a certain service. It's usually a positive because, if a lot of people used it, it's quite, easy for new users to think that, okay, that's actually, this must be pretty good for that amount of users already
Right.
satisfied or
So
actively
they're
using.
really looking for social proof. They don't care so much exactly where it came from, right? Like they're just looking for
Yeah,
basically a proof that others are finding it valuable. Fair.
exactly. So if you don't want to say like, if you want to, if you cannot really state a country name, you can always say globally,
Hmm.
we have, 20 million users are using our app and so on.
Sounds good.
It would work, yes. And watch out for the dark patterns. Yep, that's about what I have prepared. And if
Great.
there are any other question, I would love to answer
Sure.
and
So
love to discuss.
well, thanks so much, Alan, for sharing all that. I think that it was really valuable, in particular for folks who maybe weren't able to attend the Japan one. There's some really great sort of differences here, um, and so thanks for kind of comparing and contrasting and showing all that, all the different things you need to be aware of. It looks like the Korean market's maybe a little closer to the American market in
Yeah,
some of the things than
yep,
like compared to Japan, but there still are
exactly.
quite a few differences. So it's useful to know what they are. Um, Anybody who has any final questions, please, we're getting some thank yous in the chat, so that's nice. Thanks all of you
Pleasure.
for attending. Any other questions? Please feel free to throw them in the chat. We'll wait another few seconds just to let you guys jump in with anything you have.
I mean, I think, we've we did, I mean, you were good at, sharing those questions in the chat,
Yeah,
throughout the course of the presentation.
yeah,
So
yeah. It looks like we got one more. Is there a good resource to track legislation like the one related to the 30-day free trials? Some way to kind of keep up on that for the regulations in Korea?
yeah, that's almost everything will be in Korean. So like,
Right.
just I mean,
Okay.
in this slide I put a link to Korean Fair Trade Commission's, notes and their announcements with this, the legislation. But it's obviously, written in Korean, but
Right.
I think, the Google translation or maybe asking other AI translation tool
Right.
will, give you clearer idea about,
And
what the,
this may be less this may be a bit of a long shot, but you could also, I think, maybe potentially look at the Apple's App Store rules, because they're gonna want to make sure that
oh,
their people are following those rules if you're gonna show up in Korea.
right.
So that might be another place. That might be a little slower, I would imagine,
I,
than Alan's suggestion, but you might be able to
yeah.
look in there too.
But I think I just is if I'm remembering it correctly, I think there was an announcement made by App Store and Play
Hmm.
Store about
Hmm.
this. I
Okay.
think and the articles were written in English, so if I
Nice.
can find them, I can share the link
Sure.
along with
Yeah. So
this.
some other place to go to look would be Google or Apple. Cool. Okay. I think that's all the questions we have. So once again, Alan, thank you so much for joining us and sharing all of your really useful knowledge. I think that's going to be really helpful for everyone. And thank you everyone in the audience for attending. And anyone who's watching this after as the recording, thank you for watching that as well. So thanks so
Thanks
much, and
for
we'll see you next.
inviting.
Yeah, we'll see you next time.